The phone rang at 6:03 a.m., sharp and unforgiving, cutting through the quiet like a truth that refused to wait. Emily Carter was already awake. She had spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every word from the evening before. A visit. The silence. The look on Mark's face when he said Daniel was scared of staying. By morning, something inside her had shifted. Not broken, clarified. She let the phone ring twice before answering. "Hello, Emily." Daniel's voice sounded far away, careful. "I heard Mark and the others stop by." Of course, he knew. They always told him everything. Except, apparently, how lonely his wife had become. "Yes," Emily said. Her voice surprised her. Calm, steady. They did. A pause. "Is everything okay?" Emily looked around the bedroom. Daniel's side of the bed was still made, untouched for months. She used to avoid looking at it. Today, she didn't. "No," she said simply. "But it's honest now." Daniel exhaled. "I didn't mean for them to get involved." "You involved them when you left," Emily replied. No anger, just truth. Another pause. "Longer this time?" "I needed time," Daniel said. "You took my time with you," Emily said, "and never asked." Silence pressed between them. "I'll be back soon," Daniel finally said. "We'll talk then." Emily closed her eyes. "I don't think we should wait." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," she said, slowly, "that coming back doesn't fix what broke when you left." Daniel didn't answer. They hung up without saying goodbye. Emily sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, phone in her hand. For the first time since Daniel left, she didn't feel the urge to call him back. She stood, showered, dressed, and walked out into the morning like someone stepping into a new version of herself. Later that afternoon, there was another knock. At the door, she knew who it was before she opened it. Mark stood alone this time, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes uncertain. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. Emily studied his face. He looked tired, honest, human. "Come in," she said. They sat at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the wood. No coffee this time, no small talk. "I talked to Daniel," Emily said, BOT. Mark nodded. "I figured. He thinks distance fixes things," she continued. "I don't." Mark didn't interrupt. "I don't know what happens next," Emily said. "But I know I can't keep living like I'm on pause." Mark met her eyes. "Shouldn't. Something pass between?" Then, not attraction, not temptation, understanding. The kind that doesn't ask for anything in return. "You're stronger than you think." Mark said. Emily smiled faintly. "I'm tired of being strong alone." That evening, Ethan and Lucas came by too. Not together. Separately, one after the other. Each conversation was different, but the message was the same. They were sorry they should have spoken sooner. They admired her, more than they had ever said. None of them crossed a line. None of them needed to. What Emily felt wasn't romance, it was validation, witness, the relief of being seen without, being wanted for the wrong reasons. Days passed. Emily stopped checking her phone. She started walking in the mornings, cooking, real meals again, playing music in the house. The silence softened. Then a letter arrived. Handwritten, Daniel's handwriting. Emily opened it slowly. He wrote about fear, about pressure, about feeling like he had failed before he even tried. Apologized for leaving, but not for why. He asked for another chance, but didn't say how he'd be different. Emily folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. That night, she called Mark. "Can you come over?" she asked. "I'm there," he said. They sat on the porch, wrapped in light jackets, the night quiet around them. "I don't hate Daniel," Emily said, "but I can't save someone who won't stay." Mark nodded. Sometimes love ends without villains. Emily looked up at the stars. "I used to think letting people in was weakness. And now?" Mark asked. "Now, I think it's how you survive." Weeks later, Daniel returned. Emily met him in a public cafe. Neutral ground, clear lines. He looked thinner, older. "I came back for you," he said. Emily shook her head gently. You came back because you were lonely. He frowned. Isn't that the same? No, she said. One chooses, the other escapes. They talked for an hour, calm, honest, painful when they stood to leave. Daniel reached for her hand. Emily stepped back. I hope you find peace, she said, but it won't be with me. She walked out without looking back. Life didn't become perfect after that. It became real. Emily filed the paperwork. She downsized the house. She kept the dog. She changed the paint color in the bedroom, Mark. Ethan and Lucas stayed in her life not as replacements. Not as romance, but as proof that care could exist without expectation. Sometimes they had dinner. Sometimes they didn't talk for weeks. It didn't matter. Emily began volunteering at a local shelter. She took a writing class. She laughed more easily now. One evening, months later, Emily stood in her living room, music playing softly, sunlight fading through the windows. She thought about that. First knock at the door. How afraid she had been, how close she came to staying silent. She hadn't let 3 men into her life that night. She had let the truth in, and the truth didn't ruin her. It gave her back to herself. The knock came just as the sun dropped behind the maple trees. Sharp and sudden, like it knew it didn't belong there. Emily Carter stood in her quiet Connecticut kitchen. One hand on the counter, the other holding a phone that hadn't lit up. All day. The house felt too big for one person. Too quiet. Too honest. She wasn't expecting anyone, and that was exactly why her heart started racing. Another knock. Firmer this time, she walked to the door, each step louder than the last. When she opened it, the past stepped inside all at once. 3 men stood on her porch, Mark, Ethan, and Lucas. Her husband's closest friends. Men she had known for over a decade. Men who had toasted at her wedding, teased her at cookouts, and called this house home without ever living in it. For a second, none of them spoke. Emily, Mark finally said, his voice careful. We were nearby. Thought we should check. On you, the air felt tight. Emily searched their faces for a reason, a warning. Anything that explained why all 3 of them were here together? She could have said no. She should have asked questions. Instead, she stepped back. Come in. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded much louder than it should have. Inside, nothing had changed and everything had. Daniel's shoes were still by the stairs. His jacket still hung by the door. The smell of his aftershave still lived in the hallway. Faint, but stubborn. The men noticed it too. She could tell by the way their eyes moved, slow and unsure. They sat in the living room, spaced, apart like strangers pretending they weren't. Emily brought coffee even though it was late. Her hands shook as she poured. No one mentioned it. So Ethan said, forcing a light tone, "How are you holding up?" Emily smiled. It was automatic. I'm fine. The lie hung there thin and fragile. Lucas leaned back, eyes scanning the room. House feels quieter without him. Emily nodded. Yeah, it does. Daniel had been gone for 6 months. A job assignment, he'd said. Temporary. Important. Necessary. The first month he called every night. The second month, every few days. By the 4th month, messages replaced calls. By the 6th, silence filled the spaces where answers used to be. Mark cleared his throat. We saw Daniel last week. Emily's fingers tightened around her mug. How is he? The men exchanged looks again, not secretive, hesitant. Like they were standing at the edge of something none of them wanted to step into first. He's okay, Mark said. Busy. Emily nodded, even though the word felt empty. They talked about safe things at first, traffic, weather, old college stories, that once made Emily laugh harder than anyone. Tonight, she smiled but didn't laugh. The memories felt borrowed now, like they belonged to another version of her as the minutes passed. The room grew warmer, closer. The men relaxed, not in a dangerous way, in a familiar one. They weren't intruders. They were reminders. Ethan noticed the photo frame on the shelf, turned face down. He didn't ask about it, Lucas noticed the dust on Daniel's side of the couch. Mark noticed everything else. "You don't have to pretend with us," Mark said quietly. Emily looked at him, really looked. He wasn't smiling. None of them. "I'm not pretending," she said. Mark didn't argue. He just nodded, like someone who knew better. Silence settled again. Heavier this time. Emily stood and walked to the window, staring out at the dark street. She felt them behind her, not watching, just present. It made her chest tighten. "He said he'd be back by fall," she said suddenly. "He said we'd fix things when he got back." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Lucas leaned forward. "Did he say what things?" Emily shook her head. "No." Ethan frowned. "Emily, did Daniel tell you why he really left?" She turned slowly. "What do you mean?" The room seemed to shrink. Mark stood up, pacing once, then stopping. "We thought he'd talk to you. About what?" Emily asked, her voice sharper now. Mark looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at Lucas. Finally, Alaka spoke. "About how unhappy he was." Emily felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Everyone gets unhappy. That doesn't mean you leave." "No," Lucas said. "But he wasn't just unhappy. He was scared." "Scared of what?" Emily asked. Mark exhaled. "Of staying." The word hit harder than shouting ever could. Emily sat down slowly. "That doesn't make sense." "It does," Ethan said gently. "When someone doesn't know how to face their life." Emily's hands clenched in her lap. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve the truth," Mark said. "And because Daniel didn't have the courage to say it himself." Emily looked at the three men in front of her, familiar faces, trusted voices, and suddenly they felt like messengers carrying news she had avoided for months. "He said he needed space," she whispered. "He said he loved me. I think he does," Lucas said. "And the only way he knows how." "It's not enough," Emily said, her voice breaking despite her effort to keep it steady. No one argued. Mark stepped closer, careful to keep distance. "Emily, we didn't come here to hurt you." "Then why did you come?" she asked. Mark hesitated. "Because we've been watching you wait." The word wait burned. Emily laughed once, short and sharp. "I'm his wife." "And you're still alone?" Ethan said softly. That was it. The truth she hadn't named finally stood up in the room. Emily covered her face, not crying yet, just breathing through the weight of it. No one touched her. They let her have the moment. When she looked up again, her eyes were dry. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Longer than we should have," Mark admitted. "And none of you said anything." "We hoped he'd do the right thing," Lucas said. "We were wrong." Emily stood again, restless now. "So what happens now?" Mark shook his head. "That's up to you." She walked to the door and opened it, letting cold night air rush in. "I think you should go." They didn't argue. They grabbed their coats, guilt written across their faces, at the door. Ethan paused. "Emily, you're not invisible, not to us." She nodded once. The door closed. Emily leaned against it, heart pounding. The house felt different now. Not emptier, louder. Like the walls had finally started talking back. She walked through each room, touching the life she'd been maintaining alone. The bed, the kitchen table. The calendar still marked with Daniel's return date, now long past. She sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, she wasn't waiting for a call. She was listening to herself. And deep down, she knew this night wasn't an ending. It was the moment before everything changed.